So are you both okay with 5-minute openings?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I think I probably prepared more than him, so I might, if mine goes over a little bit.
If you agree on 5 minutes, I will be sticking you to 5 minutes.
I don't think he'll mind if I go a little over.
Okay, we'll see whenever he shows up. There's a big audience this time, so let's hope they don't have to wait too long. And here we are. Okay. Right. Okay, PZH, can you hear me? You are muted on your end.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. So, are you both okay with 5-minute openings, or what?
I do 5-7 or whatever is needed.
Okay. So I will be keeping us to time on this. So we'll go openings, open discussion, and then see if there's a Q&A, right?
Yeah.
CHUM?
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, I will open our debate on tonight's topic, should Jews abandon the left? And PZH has the affirmative, so let's hear the argument.
Okay, so I'm arguing that the Jews in the diaspora, let's say in the UK and the US, should abandon the left. The reason why is because the left has abandoned them. There has actually, while researching this topic, there has actually been quite a lot of articles written about these in opinion pieces across different newspapers, but I'll just try to summarize in what way has the left abandoned the Jews. So let's say that for argument's sake, or for the sake of this discussion, that the left occupy several parts of society, and let's say those would be K through 12 education, or they have more influence on these areas, media, universities, politics and NGOs, and perhaps even bureaucracy. Focusing on these areas, we can see that in K through 12, for example, with the propagation of social and emotional learning and the reduction in the value of meritocracy, Jews have done worse in these areas. Jews have been targeted in high schools throughout America. It is very much the case that there was an example of a high school where they were celebrating around the time of October 2023 about, again, the issue of Palestine, but Jews felt unsafe in those kinds of environments. With regards to the media has been particularly hostile in the case of Israel. There was a study recently that the media included the word genocide in Israel 9 times more than any other genocide ever recorded in history. So, for example, recent things that the media reported that turned out to be completely false was that 14,000 babies will die in 48 hours. The tanks shot at Palestinians waiting in line for food in the new Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution centers. Or that the an Israeli JDAM hit a hospital. All these turned out to be fake. It was reported. We have universities in the last year have been particularly hostile to Jews. Apart from having historically low admissions of Jews in Harvard, we had a year of constant physical and psychological harassment of Jewish students. But more seriously, we've had an anti-Zionist curriculum, or post-Zionist curriculum, and the development of this ideology in universities for at least 15-20 years. So an example from a teacher who spoke out. I'm not sure which school exactly, but quoting that teacher, do not cower to Zionists, shame them, do not welcome Zionists in this context is indistinguishable from Jews because no one knows who is not a Zionist. Do not welcome them in our spaces, do not make them feel comfortable. Why should those genocide-loving fascists be treated any differently than any other flat-out racist? In addition, we've seen an increase of violence from, at the very least, from the far left. Okay. We've seen violence at the very least from the far left. There was the execution of two Jews coming out of a Jewish museum in New York. We've seen violent protests throughout at least 18 months, violent protests around synagogues, violent protests on university campuses. We have seen this also extend to politics and NGOs. Jews have been excluded from the Women's March, they've been excluded from LGBTQ organizations. We have, in the UK, we had Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party in 2017-2019 that excluded Jews or very aggressive against Jews, to the point where one of the Jewish MPs needed police protection to go into a Labour conference. Now I'll pause here. When I took on this...
You're about to go on to time, so can we have one more sentence and then finish up?
Okay. When I made this debate with CHUM, I didn't realize that his position is against the Jewish state existing and against Jews needing an army to protect themselves. So it seems to me that CHUM is the perfect person why Jews should leave the left. So I'd really be interested to hear what his comments are.
Okay, on that note, Chum, let's hear your comment. You have 5 minutes starting now.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, so that's not my position, but good of you to end your opening with a smear. So my position, so I actually wrote this out ahead of time. I predict there won't be a definition of what is meant by the left, what is meant by abandon, what is meant by Jews. I predict that it will simply be assumed that the left has abandoned Jews. I predict that the use or definition of Jew will be conflated with Israeli, with Zionist, with support for Israel, and that criticism of Israel and Zionism will be conflated with anti-Semitism. And I predict that a significant violent threat won't be identified. So far, I wrote these predictions out before the debate began, and so far they've come out. So let's see here. So I define anti-Semitism as attacks verbally or physically against Jewish persons or institutions simply for the fact that they are or associate with Jews. Jewishness can be seen in two parts: race/ethnicity and religion. Historically, anti-Semites tended to target Jews as either being members of an inferior race or for demonizing their practice of religion. And ultimately, it's up to an analysis of the specific details of the case. However, accusations of anti-Semitism have been weaponized by Israel and its supporters as an effective propaganda strategy. Anyone who criticizes Israel in support of Palestine is routinely accused of anti-Semitism. It works like this. A person expresses sympathy for Palestinians living in historic Palestine, recognizes features of Israeli apartheid, and so on. In response, Israeli supporters say, you only feel that way because you're an anti-Semite, you obviously hate Jewish people. And if you happen to be Jewish, you'll be called a self-hating Jew. So it's lose-lose, basically. However, this attack has lost its potency, leaving aside the fact that Palestinians, Syrians, Lebanese, and others are also Semitic peoples. You do not need to be a racist to criticize Israel, nor is it the exclusive purview of racists. The psychology of this technique is simple. Tarring your critics as racist makes their message easier to dismiss. Calling the motivations of your critics into question makes it harder to take their criticism seriously. So, and then just with the time left, so some of the things that he did say...
You have 2.5 minutes left.
Yeah, that's fine. So some of the things that he did say is he specifically cited Jews in the diaspora. So if we're limiting the discussion to Jewish people in the diaspora, that's fine if he wants to do that. So he said that the left, quote unquote, is basically in education, media, universities, politics, NGOs, and bureaucracy. And I would just argue that whatever he's calling the left is probably just at best like liberal or centrist. And the kinds of things that he's criticizing are things which are, they're not well researched. So, reduction in the value of meritocracy. I'd be interested in hearing what his measurement of that is, if he has one. Promotion of social and emotional learning. I'd be interested to hear what's wrong with that. It sounds like he's just saying, like, something that he's going to call DEI is bad. The media is hostile towards Israel. Plenty of media outlets, including the BBC, New York Times, and many others, have actually attacked their editors very strongly because they refuse to allow them to use terms like genocide, like ethnic cleansing, like occupation, like even Palestinian, that kind of thing. So it's bizarre to me that he would say something like that, because the media, especially mainstream media, has notoriously been extremely soft on Israel, obfuscating and softening with headlines and various other things. So let's see. So there have been false stories, he claims. 14,000 babies will die in 24 hours. Tanks shot at people waiting for food. Now, I don't know if they specifically said that tanks shot at them, but I mean, it's just verifiably true that that this new aid scheme, after 3 months of a starvation siege, has resulted in, just gunfire from Israeli forces and from the American subcontractors firing at and killing people who are just trying to get a tiny bit of aid after being forced to walk for 10 kilometers and wait in lines for hours and hours, and being, ordered basically to kind of like give up their connections and so on in exchange for that. He said that there's an anti-Zionist curriculum, meaning that universities are hostile to Jews and antagonistic to Zionism. I mean, so what? If you want to criticize Zionism, criticize Zionism. Zionism and Judaism are not one and the same. So, like I predicted about the conflation of Zionism with Judaism. And then an increase in violence. So he claimed that there's an execution of 2 Jews coming from a Jewish museum. There was an execution of 2 workers of the Israeli embassy. One of them was a Christian German, if I'm not mistaken, but he was a Christian. So they were not Jews, but yeah, they were planning to go to Israel and get married and so on. This shouldn't have happened, but I mean, you just have to get the basic facts right, and it seems like my opponent doesn't have the basic facts. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we will move into 45 minutes of open discussion. I will try to take a hands-off approach, but if you're just talking over each other, I will mute at my discretion. So let's begin.
Okay, I just want to confirm, we have on this Discord, there's another debate where it says Israel does not have right to exist, not yours, but in it you said I agree with both statements. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you agree that Israel does not have right to exist?
Yeah.
Do you also agree the second part that you said, that Jewish people do not require a state to be safe?
Correct. Yeah.
Why?
You want me to explain why you're?
Yes.
So so what you said was that I was, quote, against a Jewish state existing and needing an army. So the first statement, I'm not against the existence of the state of Israel. What I'm against is an apartheid ethno-state that, does what Israel does, essentially. So comparison, apartheid South Africa did not have a right to exist. Any or other state doesn't have a right of existence. Who has the right of existence are people. And so states only have kind of like authorities and so on, but they don't have rights to exist, except, especially if they violate the rights of their own people and the people that they, take actions against unjustifiably and so on. Does that make sense?
Well, it's dog shit, but what's about the second part about not...
What's dog shit about it?
Hold on. Can you explain the second statement?
Yeah. So, Jews don't need their own private army to be safe. They don't, and so on.
How could you possibly make that assertion, considering the history of Jews being genocided?
Well, the origins of anti-Semitism and the motivation for the movement of Zionism and so on comes from European anti-Semitism. So
anti-Semitism all over the world.
Yeah, when you No, specifically it was European. So historically,
it was the worst at European, but that doesn't mean they don't need protection.
PZH, can CHUM please be allowed to finish a sentence?
Go ahead.
Anyways, you can very strongly object, but it's better to do it after. But yeah, so the motivation for the creation of the State of Israel was specifically European Zionism, specifically the Dreyfus Affair, and even within historic Palestine, to that point, before Zionism basically began moving, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and so on of colonists into that area, there was relative peace and quiet and coexistence. And not only that, I mean, you look at modern day Europe, you look at modern day U.S. or any Western country, or even other like non-Western countries and so on, and you see that like Jews aren't specifically singled out and attacked in a way that threatens their existence, and like if it when those things do happen, there's this robust legal system that steps in, and so on. Like that doesn't mean like that, like for example, that the state shouldn't kind of take special steps to protect them or whatever, but neither does it mean that they need like their own standing army. Anyways, I'd like to hear why the first statement that I made is bad, like why you disagree with.
Well, it's a bit of a diversion. It's a bit of a diversion from our current topic, but I can comment on it quickly. Israel is not an apartheid state. Israel is not an ethno-state. Israel is a parliamentary democracy with religious characteristics. In it, its citizens have full legal rights. There are no second-class citizens. If you mean like a 25%, it is true. If you mean like a 25% of the population that is not Jewish or Arab Muslim, they have full rights. They go to school. They get welfare. They get access to higher education. They can be doctors, lawyers. They have representative in the government. They were in the government in a coalition for 2 years. So all these things negate the whole concept of second-class citizen. But if you mean Palestinians specifically, these are outside of Israel. They're living in their own territory. They're not citizens of Israel, so Israel cannot give them more or take away rights. And while I can appreciate there's a war between these two groups, it doesn't mean that they are that is an apartheid. Like I could say just as easily, if the definition is so broad, that Palestinians are an ethno-state that demand there to be apartheid because they do not allow any Jews to be in the territories.
Yeah, so you're
Palestinian terrorists, and in addition,
I need to be able to respond.
They deny. I haven't finished. And in addition, they deny Jews the right to enter their holy site.
You can't talk forever without him being allowed to interrupt
He asked me a question. Right. I wasn't talking forever.
But you're not responding to the question, though. And I'll explain why. So this is why I wanted to get in and respond, because you're going off on a huge, long tangent about why it's not an ethno-state, why it's not apartheid, and so on, so on, so on, so on, so. And, like, all that's not true. Human rights groups have, like, whatever. But, look, you can look the reports up on your own time. But the question was about the right of a Jewish state to exist. And so none of those things of what you said have any bearing on what I said about, like, states don't have rights to exist.
Any state?
Any state.
Okay, so are you far left? Are you socialist?
Doesn't matter.
How do you define yourself politically?
It doesn't. I mean, what bearing does any of that have to do on the question about?
You said any state, so I'm like,
yeah, any state.
Is this some sort of anarcho-communism or something?
Maybe you didn't. No, it's not. It doesn't have to do with anarchism. It has to do with
you said.
So I'll just yeah. Okay.
Can I just clarify what you said?
Yeah,
if I understood it correctly.
Yeah.
You said that South Africa specifically does not deserve to be as a state. Does England deserve to be as a state?
No. Okay, so I'll explain it. So the example that I gave was apartheid South Africa. So during apartheid, if somebody said South Africa has a right to exist, obviously they don't have a right to exist. And obviously the form of the state as an apartheid state is like the very thing that's being defended when you say that the state has a right to exist. So states don't have rights to exist, people have rights to exist. And a state's right to exist a state's existence is contingent on its support of its people's rights and so on. And so Israel doesn't have a right to exist. It doesn't have a right to exist as a Jewish state. And specifically as a Jewish state, the way that it exists, if it exists as a Jewish state, it has to take away rights from other peoples if it's going to be a Jewish state. So that's
Does Israel protect citizens of Israel?
When you were saying about the full rights of and its 20% population,
Can you answer my question?
Well, minority groups do not have full rights within Israel. So when you say protect, no, they do not.
Which
like for example,
do not have full rights in Israel?
Palestinians.
Are they citizens of Israel?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, they're called. Israel calls them Arab citizens of Israel because they want to erase their Palestinian identity.
Okay.
But
okay, sure.
They do exist.
You're saying that Arab Israelis do not have full rights.
Correct. Yes.
Does Israel protect Arab Israelis from violence?
I mean, maybe.
Okay, so do they get welfare from Israel?
I mean, none of this has to do with whether or not
they're trying to make is, and it's important, is that you saying anti-Zionist, it doesn't matter. The people doing the murdering,
of course it does.
The people doing the execution, they don't make these distinctions.
I'll explain. Why would you say that? There's no basis for you to say that.
Can I just finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
Disagree. Can I just finish that? Violence against Jews is the point I'm trying to make here. So if someone says, Zionist, if Jews are being, executed, then that is why Jews should be leaving the left, especially since it's coming from the far left. Would you agree?
How does one follow? If there are this is also one instance, right? So you're trying to make a trend out of a single instance.
So I understand. So the whole point of this debate is you gaslighting these positions. You're going to try and do you have evidence for this?
I've looked it up. I deny
your evidence. This is going to be your approach for the whole. You don't think the Jews should be concerned with things happening on the left? You think?
Yeah, of course they can be concerned. Why would I? I think it's overblown. Yeah. So
why do you think Jews should stay in the left? Make an argument for that.
It's first of all, it's your claim, but I don't mind making an argument for the position that I hold, which is that to the extent that any Jewish person is on the left, left-wing people, value things like equality, human rights, and so on, and the state of Israel is taking lots of actions that are against equality and human rights, and so if you are a left-wing Jew, then you would naturally be with the left. You wouldn't just say like, oh, there's been a senseless killing, and now I have to reevaluate everything and abandon my left-wing beliefs and so on.
Okay, but why wouldn't the left identify Jews as people who support Israel, especially since you said it's 91%?
Well, look, it could be 100%, but there could be like a single Jew who doesn't support the state of Israel, and like I would just say that like obviously ethno-states aren't like a left-wing ideal. Apartheid and ethnic cleansing aren't things that left-wing people support. So, like I said, to the extent that Jewish people are left-wing, then an act of violence like this shouldn't or wouldn't cause them to reevaluate their entire belief system and whatnot. So
I would say
Can I give your example? So your example, you cited.
Sean, you have spoken a while. Can we let PZH maybe say
it's fine.
or two and then continue? Or?
It's fine.
So the two pieces of evidence that you posted in your original challenge was about changing the status of Canada to like a level 2. We can talk about that, but I think the more interesting one is the report on anti-Semitism. So this from Combat Anti-Semitism. I think on like the 3rd or 4th page it says here, quote, 96.4% of left-wing incidents recorded in 2024 manifested as Israel-related and or anti-Zionist anti-Semitism. So I would deny that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, but they're outright saying here that 97% of their incidences of left-wing anti-Semitism, quote-unquote, is just anti-Zionism.
Okay, so what?
Well, so let me give examples of what they call anti-Semitism.
Wait. So does this mean that Jews do not experience this form of violence or hate?
I mean, they do to some extent, yeah.
No, they're the recipients of it. The reason why it came to them could be anti-Semitism, it could be anti-Zionism, but they're still the recipient of it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but I would argue that the much more, like the elephant in the room of why they're experiencing that has to do with the actions of the state of Israel and the support of.
And what can they do about that?
I mean, nothing. They could stop supporting Israel, sure. I mean,
okay, I'm sure that's what you want, but the left is attacking them. You've admitted that. There are two reasons: one is anti-Semitism, one is anti-Zionism. Not denying that. They are the recipients of these violence and aggressive hate crimes, however you define them. And I'm saying because of this, the Jews should leave the left because the left have abandoned the Jews. They're attacking them aggressively. The far left are executing them. So I'm
I'll give an analogous example. So, let's say 100% of Germans supported Nazi Germany, or like for like a less boring example, maybe like 100% of whatever. Okay, yeah, support Nazi Germany. So, like if somebody goes and kills like Nazi supporters, you're not going to say like, oh, Germans should leave the Social Democrats because the Social Democrats left them when they, I don't know, assassinated, I don't know, von Himmler or whatever the fuck. Like, it's just.
I'm not understanding. I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay. The fact that, like, even if it was 100% of Jews supported the actions of the state of Israel, it wouldn't mean that actions taken against those, 100% of Jews are anti-Jewish. They're anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, and so on.
Again, it doesn't matter. It does not matter to me.
Of course it matters. That's the whole crux.
No. Your crux fails utterly because they're still the recipients of this violence. It doesn't matter to me if it's for this reason or for that reason. They're still the recipients of the violence. Therefore, they should leave the left.
Well, look, what you're describing, it sounds like are people who aren't on the left, if that's the case. Like, if they're like fully on board with what Israel's doing and shit, and then like people come out and say,
so you're
free
saying
Palestine,
unless like
end
Jews,
apartheid and shit like that.
So you're saying Jews in the left, if they should be allowed to remain on the left, should like go through a process where they violently renounce.
I'm not saying
they renounce anything to do with Israel. They beg for forgiveness. They whip themselves.
No, none of that. None of that.
And beg for forgiveness from all the other minorities. Is that what Jews need to do in order to stay on the left?
Yeah, I'm saying it. Well, I'm not like demanding what people have to do or whatever, but I'm just pointing out that like left-wing views typically are anti-apartheid, anti-ethno-state, like anti-subjugation and so on and so forth. And so like to the extent that people.
So you agree with me then? They shouldn't be on the left.
To the extent that people. Okay, I don't know why you need to interrupt me, but I'm just saying that to the extent that people support those beliefs, which aren't left-wing beliefs, they're just not left-wing, and so that means that the supposition of your like challenge is describing a group that isn't actually left-wing.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's do this, right? So I'll take a real-life example. There's a Jewish gay rights activist in the U.S. that has been an activist and has been, advising NGOs and the Democrats for 20 years about, various things and to promote the LGBT community and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't see it your way. He's still progressive. He's still liberal, and he still cares about issues that are typically on the left. And he does not see Israel as an apartheid state. He does not see Israel as all the things that you're describing. He sees Israel as in a war and is trying to protect the Israelis. And the war is, I would argue, very, very difficult for both sides. And it's still going on. And perhaps there's been some imperfection, but certainly none of the academic bullshit words that you're using. And he's still on the left. Should he now would you say that he's no longer on the left and should be kicked out of the left? Because even if you're saying that, you essentially are agreeing with the proposition.
People can have different positions, like left or right wing, on a variety of issues. And if somebody was, systematically like left wing, it's called the PEP squad, progressive except for Palestine. So if somebody is in the PEP squad, I would just tell them, like, okay, well, look, I understand that you have, let's say you have like a value about like equal human rights or whatever the case is. I would just point to them. I would just say, look, these are the things that Israel is doing that make Jews unsafe when people learn about them and see that nothing's being done about it.
What does that mean?
What do you mean?
What does that mean, make Jews unsafe?
So it's a live stream genocide, and people every day see a new atrocity like on their phones. And so some people, when they see these things, it makes them angry. It makes them want to take some kind of action, whatever they can do. And they can do things in like non-principled ways, and they can do things in more strategic ways. So obviously the non-principled ways are, not supportable. But the point is just...
Are Jews in diaspora unsafe because of what Israel's doing?
Well, they're less safe because of what Israel's doing, certainly.
So you're making my point for me, then. You agree with the proposition?
It doesn't mean that they're not safe, but it increases the incidences of confrontation.
How about Jews be safer by not being next to these people who make them unsafe and move to a different political party?
But that doesn't change their like physical location of who they're next to and whatever. But
if they're not in left spaces, if they abandon the left, then they'll be more safe, according to you.
Well, that doesn't follow.
Why?
Just the fact that somebody tells, like somebody tells a Zionist free Palestine or whatever, that's not like an incidence of them being unsafe. And 97% of the incidences are Israel and Zionism related.
You just said they'll be less safe. I'm saying take themselves out of that situation where they're less safe or unsafe and put themselves in a political party or promote political parties that will make sure they are safe by strengthening the police, having a bigger police presence, and not feeding both their time, money, resources, intellectual brain power into this political group that makes them less safe.
Yeah, so
you already said that they're less safe. You basically made my point for me.
No, what I said, you didn't, you just have to listen to what I'm saying and not what you think I'm saying.
I asked you twice.
So what I said was that the actions of the state of Israel contribute to what you're describing as incidences of anti-Semitism or whatever, as the 97% here in the combat anti-Semitism, your own link shows. But it doesn't mean that.
Go ahead, sorry, finish your statement.
And then your solution is give more money to the police. That's just decidedly not a left position.
That doesn't matter. There'll be more. Okay, so that doesn't matter. If let's say they vote for a political party that allocates more money to the police, they will be more safe, right? And I would say
because more
that and I would say it's not necessarily the actions that Israel does. It's the left-wing interpretation of what Israel does.
And whatnot, that all agree the kind of things that I'm saying about what Israel does. And there's a very small minority of people who are actually academically rigorous, almost none, that can actually.
Let's just say this, right? The left are the only group that are taking action to harm diaspora Jews as a result of what.
That's not true.
I think it is. Why the right?
So if you look in your own
right wing, the right wing are even going down. They're 60% down. It's only that it's only the left that are shot up.
Yeah, if you look in your own link, there's incidences of violence from right wing and from left wing. regardless of looking into the individual specifics of it. But let me actually turn the debate on its head a little bit. So, are you aware of the rise of anti-Muslim and anti-Islam incidents?
What is that? That's nothing to do with the debate, though.
Yeah, but I'm just pointing out that if
Okay,
you're
so make a quick point, but otherwise it's got nothing to do with the debate.
Okay, there's been 8,658 complaints of anti-Muslim and anti-Arab incidents, and a huge percentage of them are actually materially harmful, including let's see, employment discrimination, housing discrimination, education discrimination, and so on. So, I mean, just pointing out the priorities here.
Sorry, the priorities. Okay, I see. So Jews should shut the fuck up and let because this is the problem. Islamophobia is the problem, actually. Yeah. Well, Jews are being executed. Islamophobia is the problem.
If you're fucking Muslims and adherents, and Arabs are being executed. So what are you even talking about? I'm just pointing out.
In the U.S. or in the UK?
In the U.S., yeah. A 6-year-old was stabbed to death like weeks after October 7th. And there are plenty of incidences of attempted drownings, of shootings, other stuff like that.
Okay, I'm against those things. There should be a bigger police presence to prevent them.
But it wouldn't prevent them. More police doesn't
try to prevent them.
I'm just saying. I mean, just more police doesn't mean less crime. There's no correlation with that. What police end up doing
I'd like to think. Okay, look again, another tangent, but I'd like to think, for argument's sake, that more police would mean less crime.
I would like to too, but unfortunately, anyways, yeah, that could be the police thing. Could be something else, but yeah. Let's see. So,
I mean, it sounds to me like you agree with me on most things. Like you agree with me that Jews are unsafe remaining in the left. So I don't see what else there is to discuss. You specifically said that.
No, I did not. You took my word. You took my words. This is the third time now. I've said it and I've clarified and I've clarified again. And then you just repeat the thing that you just heard.
However, I said that. Look, you said that the actions of Israel make Jews less. The action of Israel make Jews less safe. So Jews are just less safe, and it's not the case that the action of Israel upset the right. It's the case that the action of Israel. You said upset the left. No, I don't see. Do the right have like a thing where they're like, no, we really care about Palestine and we don't want them to die? Is that something the right care about?
They care about American money, tax dollars being used to kill children and starve civilians and whatnot.
Right. Okay. Great. So Israel has already said that they're going to wean themselves off this aid. So that's
not really possible, but especially
of course it's possible. Israel is a $530 billion economy. Of course it's possible.
And $30 billion in like the last year on average is just specifically to fund genocide.
They can shut. They can wean themselves off.
I know it bothers you that it's genocide.
Because it lies.
Please be allowed to finish his sentence.
Okay, sorry. So let's just sticking to the point. The right don't care about this particular one. Sure, they care about the money, but they don't care about the money at any time in the last decade. Right? It's not going to add. It's not going to add to their violence or reduce from it.
Can you support your claim that the right don't care about the genocide?
I don't agree that there is a genocide. I think there's genocide in Darfur, in Sudan, in Yemen, but not in Israel.
So all the brown people are doing the genocide, not Israel.
All the what people, did you say?
All the brown people.
All the brown people? Why is that? What's the connection? Those people are dying
you just named
much larger
countries.
People are dying in much larger numbers.
Do you not realize it?
No, because I'm not racist like you. I don't know. That didn't come to my mind at the first time.
Right, it's not something you even think about
but
when you're saying this.
But my point was correct. My point was that more people. Would you agree at least that much more people are dying in those areas than they are in the Gaza war?
But
I mean, just factually.
Yemen, the Saudi Arabian genocide of Yemenis ended a few years ago. So
our kids starving in Yemen currently.
I don't know what the bearing on the question of that is, but look, I don't know.
Is there a
maybe yes, maybe no.
So 85,000 children starved in Yemen. A lot of the pictures that you see on your phone from Gaza, when you put them through Google Images, come from Yemen.
Oh, here comes Pallywood. There you go.
Anyway, in Darfur, you have right now people dying. In Sudan, you have right now people dying.
Yeah, in Sudan.
But you don't. I don't see protests about it all year round.
Well, does the U.S. supply tens of billions of dollars every year to genocide Sudanese?
This argument is just
it's the UAE that's doing it.
It's not
civilians in the UAE who actually have pressure against their government should be the ones that are standing up and opposing it, and people who are shipping, and so on, like the shipping points for the weapons and so on.
Okay. But people are dying. That part is irrelevant. It's the money that's relevant to you, yes?
The funding of the weapons and the
but
actual.
Not people dying. But not people dying.
Of course, no. It's connected. What are you talking about?
Right, but more.
How do you disconnect?
And you care about the money.
How do you disconnect billions of dollars going to fund weapons which are directly doing the genocide from the actual genocide?
I'm asking you.
There's no disconnection.
More people are dying, and you care about the money more than the people dying.
What I'm saying is.
I heard what you said.
People are dying.
Can we agree?
Genocide is wrong and bad. The reason that the genocide is happening is because there's weapons and there's power that goes towards the groups that are doing it, and those weapons and power don't come for free.
You think that that America is funding entirely the war that's going on?
Yeah, like 80%, 70%, 80%.
Do you think if America gave zero money, that Israel would still not carry out the war?
They might still do the genocide, but they would have a lot less power and ability to do it.
The war, but the war will still happen. So you agree that the war will still happen, and
I assume, in the way that it's.
I assume if you do a quick Google search, you will see that there are 3 other countries in the region that more people have died. Even Syria's civil war, more people have died than in the Gaza war. A lot more, multiple times more. But the media still shows 9 times more the word Israel and genocide than they do than these other places. So
probably because it's happening
do you not see this like as an issue?
Probably because it's happening right now. What do you mean?
Okay.
I would hope that the media would report more on the genocide that's ongoing rather than one that's done.
There are other places in the world, at least 3, where more people are dying than in the Gaza war, even the reported numbers.
Well, we already went over that Yemen has been over for several years now. I don't deny Sudan.
Can we just assume for a second that if you do
I'm pretty sure Darfur is a region
you will find that there's at least 3 other regions in the world where more people are dying, but no one is concerned about them at all.
That's not the way people do their moral calculation. It's not like if one more person dies in some other conflict. It has to do, first of all, even that the proportion. It has to do with the amount of power, the proximity to that power, and the support of that power.
And the Jews.
You're the one that's inserting "and the Jews." Like I already plainly said to you.
It seems to be like no Jews, no news to me. I don't know. It could be my
right. So just like I predicted, this is going to devolve into accusations of anti-Semitism.
You predicted a lot of things that were not relevant to this conversation.
Absolutely true. I'll read my predictions again. I predict there won't be a definition of what is meant by the left abandoned or Jews. I predict I will simply assume that the left has abandoned the Jews.
I don't think there's any need to reread yourself verbatim. Okay. If you want to reword it or say, well, you did this, that's fine, but I don't think you need to read things again verbatim.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let me ask a comparison. Let's say, you're familiar with the war in Ukraine? Yes.
Yeah.
Do you support the Ukrainians or the Russians?
I mildly lean towards Russia.
You support Russia?
I said I mildly lean towards support for Russia. Yeah.
Okay, so I can't use this example on you, but let's say that the majority of left people in America support Ukraine. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously if they support Ukraine, then they hate Russia. Have you seen any violence against Russians in America?
I couldn't say that I have, no.
Has it been on the news?
Look, I understand the rhetorical questions. I don't mind.
And what do you conclude from the example?
I'll object from. I would object if I object to any of the questions and whatnot. Well,
what do you conclude from the example?
Yeah, there are plenty of things. Less Russian population, less noticeable to tell if somebody is a Russian. Less.
You're thinking on the spot, but someone can, if you have a thick Russian accent, someone can guess that, at least assume, like they do in the case of Jews, that you are Russian. I don't see any violence against Russians in universities that say they know they're Russian. I don't see any violence against Russian in the streets, in particular to the Ukraine war. That's not the case at all. But why is it the case here?
The point is that could simply just be like a reporting bias or any other number of variables that you're not accounting for. Including that Russians. Let me just including the
10-minute warning.
Yeah, including the fact that Russians in the U.S. aren't assumed to support Russia.
It's largely irrelevant because you can have Jews that may or may not support Israel. But the point I wanted to make, which I forgot a second ago. So we don't have
that
violence.
It's hypocritical that there's no violence against Russians, but there is some amount of violence towards Zionists in the U.S. Also could be like tangled with their Jewishness, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it's very thick. The pressure is very thick on just being a Jew, even if you're pro-Israel, against Israel, completely anti-Zionist, completely pro-Zionist. It doesn't necessarily matter. Like, you'll still be like grouped into that group by people who hate Israel or think the same way you do. So I don't exactly, if you're doing this sort of grouping and you're not differentiating, you can do the same to Russians. Like, you don't know if they are pro, or you hear a thick Russian accent. Hey, you kill people. I remember the part I wanted to know.
Go ahead.
The people who died in the Russian-Ukraine war, like hundreds of thousands more than the Gaza war. Hundreds of thousands more on both sides.
Okay.
Like several. No one really knows the numbers, which is odd, because even the Iraq war.
It's fair to say that it's 300,000, let's say, like on both sides.
300,000. No one really knows, but even in the Iraqi war, like, people today don't know the death toll from that. Right. It could be off by 100,000.
Right.
But in the case of the Gaza war, we know to the minute exactly.
Well.
Right, without any infrastructure whatsoever, we know to the minute exactly how many people died, when they died, by what they died.
That's
no, okay. I mean, if you think I'm exaggerating, that's fine. But I'm making a comparison here. That we have wars that have been over for 10 years. We don't know how many people died. Russia and Ukraine, it's hundreds of thousands.
Right.
If you look at it, but we don't have a daily death count. We don't attack Russians in America or in the UK. Even I don't even know if Ukrainians.
Well, I'll give you a relevant reason for that if you want. I think a relevant reason why, like the death toll between Russia and Ukraine isn't seen as awful as the death toll of Palestinians, and it's because we know that a huge number of the people who are killed in Russia and Ukraine are soldiers, are active combatants, and we know that a huge number of the people killed in Gaza aren't combatants.
Russia that has.
There are some civilian casualties, but we know that in Russia, Ukraine, like, you can't compare it. Like, the number of civilian casualties as a ratio of each attack and whatnot.
What is the civilian casualties in Gaza, in the Gaza war? Just so I know, civilian only.
Yeah, casualty includes injuries and deaths, and we know that.
I asked the question of civilians.
Yeah, I would say that the number of deaths at this point is at least approaching 200,000, if not already there.
Oh my fucking god, you're insane.
This is with Israeli estimates.
Off your mind. No,
these are Israeli estimates.
No, they're not. Which Israeli?
Hold on, let me.
Which Israeli?
Not an individual Israeli.
5 minutes.
Hold on, let me just.
You're just insane. I don't know what else to add at this point.
So. Okay, well, I mean, you can just smear if you want, but the point is, even if it's 100,000,
it's not 100,000 either.
It surely is at least 100,000. I mean, like, the death toll doesn't freeze at 50,000 after you kill all the people who are the ones that are reporting the deaths.
Is the 50,000 just civilians?
No, it's not entirely civilians. No, but that doesn't matter.
What does it include?
Like, you understand, you don't have to be coy about it. But
Okay, the death toll includes combatants. It includes people that died at the hands of Hamas, which, by the way, 70 to 100 Palestinians were shot by Hamas. Were shot by Hamas this week for betraying, in quotations, quiet, for betraying, in quotations, Hamas instructions not to take the aid from the American-Israeli initiative, the GHF. They were just shot as traitors. They were shot as traitors. And not only did they shoot them, they recorded it and put it online. Did you see? Yeah. Did you see Hamas people shoot people who stole flowers?
Yeah, I know.
From
all the people.
Fake? Is this fake? Am I lying?
I'll tell you what. If you send it to me, then I'll look into it.
No, I asked you if you saw it because you care about Palestinians. I'm asking if you saw it.
So that neither of those things have any relation to one another.
Is that a no?
No, I haven't seen that. I haven't kept up with it. I've seen the claims of it. I haven't investigated that one specifically.
The death toll includes anyone who's died, basically. So it could be
not anyone. No, it includes people who have been brought to morgues and people who have been brought to hospitals. Their body has to be physically there to be counted.
In other words, let me educate you because I've read the actual reports. So its death toll includes sorry?
3 minutes.
3 minutes? So the death toll includes civilians, combatants, and combatants can be either Hamas, PZH, someone who put up a gun and started firing at soldiers. The people who Hamas killed, the people who Hamas dropped a rocket on, because 10 to 20% of those rockets are basically made in someone's underground cabin. They fall short and fall into Gaza. The famous case was the Al-Hali hospital that fell and killed 470. Let me just finish. I have to say this. 471 people died, according to them, from that PIJ misfired rocket. And it also people who died of natural causes, and in addition, 43% of the numbers that you receive are from journalists, not doctors. Like, journalists are just reporting it, that these people have died.
Are we done?
I was done.
Okay. Yeah, there's no quantification of the specific sources. Like, obviously, theoretically, it could include, like, people that Hamas have killed, including, like, the ISIS-backed ISIS gangs that Israel's backing to loot the aid.
That's just now. That's just a week ago.
They haven't only
taking that as a
they haven't begun
you're using a talking point because other people are fighting.
They haven't. Finish a sentence and then you reply.
They haven't begun. Like, that hasn't been a true claim for only a week. It's only been that it's out in the news for a week. Since the reporting of the kill zones, it's been reported that these groups have been operating within these kill zones with full Israeli protection. This was reported by Abu Bakr Abed, who is a correspondent for DropSite. But, I mean, whatever... Right, dismiss the source. Gotcha.
Okay, 1 minute. PZH, can PZH get his reply?
I wanted to reply to what he said.
Go ahead, let him finish what he wants.
Yeah, the claim about the Al-Ali hospital, like, when Israel put up the footage of the rockets, forensic architecture basically showed that those weren't the rockets that Israel pointed to, the ones that hit the hospital. Natural causes, when you fucking starve people, they're going to be more likely to die of natural causes because their body can't heal the wounds that are inflicted against them. And then the 43% of journalists, I think you might be confusing that with the undercount of the dead. That was documented in the Lancet.
So can I just reply quickly before we do our closing, TP? Is that okay with you?
Yes. PZH reply, and then it's time for closing.
Yeah, so the 43% is written in the actual Gaza Health Ministry report. It's basically called trusted sources or journalists. Journalists say, I'm out in the field, I saw these people and just report it as a number and then write it down in the numbers. Of those numbers, basically, 7,000 are illegitimate because they don't have an ID to them. But with regards to the point with the Al-Hali hospital, and then I'll go to the closing, that was basically a 2-inch hole in the ground in the parking lot. If you're saying that actually hit the hospital, you're delusional. There's plenty of European intelligence agencies that says that at best a dozen to maybe 50 people died. In America, just stretch it to 100. But it's basically that a dozen or two people died from fire. And I can show you the pictures. You can see it yourself with your own eyes.
Okay, time to wrap it up.
Okay, so basically, I think that CHUM agreed with my entire point. The Jews are less safe on the left. That's kind of the point I was trying to make. I suggest the Jews abandon the left, just like the left has abandoned them. They look for, if they want to go to the right, go to the right. If they want to go to the Libertarian Party, go to the Libertarian Party. If they want to go to independence or special interest groups, or do whatever, or send the money to Israel instead, all that to me is fine. I suggest Jews not stop funding the left-wing parties. Stop finding anything to do with the left-wing parties. Stop contributing their time to the left-wing parties. Stop contributing your time to insane academic. The Jews in academia, stop contributing your time to insane ideologies that will only harm you or other Jews in the diaspora in the end, and just abandon it. That's my closing.
Okay, so CHUM, I'll give you 2 minutes to close.
All right, thanks. So I think it's pretty clear that there was an equivocation between Judaism and Zionism. I think that was pretty clear in the debate. For whatever, like people want to kind of soothe their conscience by telling themselves that they're left wing if they support, ethnic cleansing by, and donating to the Democratic Party to wash themselves of their guilt or whatever. I mean, obviously, if they support those kinds of things to that extent, they're not left wing, and so in which case, he's not actually arguing for people who are left wing. To the extent that people are left wing and they're kind of just part of the PEP squad, I kind of gave my response to that. Any reasonable kind of person that does read these human rights groups reports, keeps up with the news, is interested in looking at both sides rather than just kind of like one side and then just dismissing everything else, would be someone who would stay in the left and kind of like, kind of gain a better understanding about these things. So that's all.
Okay, so with that, I would like to thank you all for coming. I don't know if there's going to be anybody free. If anyone wants to go on the after show stage, I will not be free myself. So thank you all for coming. Thanks to both of our debaters. And if anybody wants to continue these types of debates, please do post your challenge on the challenge board and we can try to set them up live. So Citra has volunteered to manage the after show stage. So anybody who wants to continue the discussion can go over there, unless you want to go on the stage, do you? Or I'll invite Citra up and see.
If you invite Citra's just gonna have a go at me the whole time.
Okay, so do you want to manage an open stage if there's anybody who wants to come up?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thanks very much. Have fun.
I would not be happy with Citra. Citra, I won't be happy with you moderating this.
I just have to moderate.
If you want to find a replacement for yourself, that's fine. You yourself know why. But like, if you want to leave, like me and CHUM can just answer questions. But I'm not happy with you being there at all.
Of course, guys. I have seen a lot of hands raised. Could you guys ask like a question and then I'll decide who gets to go first? Perfect.
Come on, somebody.
Did you guys already talked about what evidence is there for a genocide?
No.
No. And the Fed asked the question. Would you like to let him come in? If that's a debate topic? Okay.
So the topic is, should Jews abandon the left? Should Jews abandon the left?
It's a your question.
Yeah. So I think that the evidence for genocide is just fairly overwhelming. South Africa put together a great compilation of the different genocidal statements from people with what's called command authority in Israeli power. And then you have, the destruction of facilities necessary for life in Gaza, including bakeries, farmlands, crops, infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and so on and so. And it's just not reasonable to think that's justified, given that the number of people in Hamas is estimated to be 25 to 30,000. Even if we assume that there's a Hamas person in 10 of these buildings, that's what it would take for the destruction of these buildings to be justified as valid military targets.
Well, I'm trying to get your thoughts. So the South Africa did put an application, but they didn't cite any genocide. They only said that there was a threat of rights that were potentially at risk. And this is something that the Chief Justice actually wrote in the opinion that was clarified on the.
Okay, folks, that was a debate between PZH and CHUM. Should Jews abandon the left? Topic is not really my cup of tea, but I wanted to see what they had to say, and now they're getting into things which I have no input or thoughts on, so I'll leave it there.